Let's talk scary. Now, I've got my wine. I've got my lemon water. It's all about balance, isn't it? It's about 8:30. I waited till it was dark. I even had an afternoon snooze. I've written down a little list of things that I wanted to talk about because, you know, I go off on a tangent. I don't like to be too organised. In fact, I don't like to do organised at all. I find that if I wing it, it's more organic and you get more of me, the real me. And I tend to not have the ability to actually filter what I say. So it's a little dangerous sometimes this way. But, you know, fuck it. Fuck it. There's too much filtering this world. So let's talk about all things spooky. It's a bit of a lost art, occultism, to talk about it, and people tend to get a little scared about it, and a lot of people think that I practice dark arts. As a witch, I find it highly offensive when people call me a good witch, and they fear that I might be a bad witch. That I don't play to. A witch is a witch. I can just as much throw out a hex as I can a spell, but I don't hex. But what is a hex? We could all have a bit of an argument about that. At a later program, we'll have a good old chat about spells and hexing and dark craft, since everyone thinks I run around doing it. My first love is witchcraft. My second love is scary shit. We grew up in a house that was pretty scary. In fact, I think I spent most of my childhood petrified. My brother and sister were 7 and 8 years older than me. Our house creaked. We had a hallway that even adults would run down because you always felt like something was coming up behind you. We would have guests say that they heard the mysterious hall walker in the evenings and early morning. We all heard it. My brother had probably the most scariest room in the house, which later became my mum's first card reading room. And the irony is the scariest room I've ever lived in became my first room, which became the red room. So that house was a toxic house. We didn't necessarily have the happiest of family environments sometimes, which caused a lot of chaos energy in the house, which I contribute to a lot of the stuff that goes on. Sorry, we've got pretty scary mosquito in here. It's only about that big. So when I was a child, we didn't have a mum who was a clairvoyant. My brother and sister don't remember mum being that way inclined. It wasn't until they left home that mum became much more involved in her gift and her love of it, and she met the right people to help her with that. But she was always extremely supportive of my love of all things occult. I didn't really know what that was when you're 5. You don't really know. I used to see snakes and spiders in the darkness. I spent most of my bedtime underneath the sheets petrified, particularly when my sister used to tease me about it. One night I did see a gentleman next to my bed. I wouldn't have called him a big, dark, sinister male, but more of a, I don't know, he's kind of just looking at me, but he was very still, and he was wearing a little old-time hat, but he wasn't, he didn't say anything, he didn't communicate anything to me, and I must admit I just stood and I stared at him for a really long time, which was ironic considering I spent most of my time under the sheets. So when I told my mum about that, instead of being most parents and they go, "Oh, don't be silly, you were dreaming," she actually asked me who I thought it was and what they did. And she certainly didn't encourage or enable that behaviour, but she never ever doubted it. We grew up being told, you know, about car park fairies, and if you believed it'd be there, your park would be there. Or that, oh, someone's going to call, and they would. Now, probably my first experience with orbs, which is kind of like little balls of light that do this. And I'm actually doing the size I first saw. And I was about 15, 16. Mum and Dad had actually gone down Latrobe RSL Club. And I was there on my own. And we wasn't a kid to be doing drugs and alcohol. So I can tell you I was pretty sober. I think I was watching some crap TV when I saw an orb shoot through the kitchen and came flat at me and then went underneath the couch. And I want to tell you about what our house looked like when we were growing up. It was your 80s home. It was brown. It was apricot. If you could ever picture a house that was fucking scary, you know, any house in the 80s was pretty scary if you think about it. I'm just going to have a quick drink. Cheers. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, because I'm leading up to my very first experience with sleep paralysis. Now, science says it happens when the body is under extreme pressure and really scared. Now, I was having my first child at the time, and we were playing house. And I remember actually it was about a week before the first episode happened that my partner was downstairs and he was having a shower. He was heading off to work. So it was morning. It was about 7 o'clock. And I was just waking up, and what I heard was someone on the staircase clearly saying, "Bastard." And I looked and no one was there. About a week later, I was laying in bed. I was sleeping. And I'm not sure what time it was, but it was night time. And I remember waking and hearing a noise to the left. And I went to sit up, and that is when the pressure jumped. And it is a jump. It's like something jumps on you and pins you. And every part of your body cannot move. And it is terrifying because it's heavy and it's on every inch of you. And I remember trying to twist my head very, very, very slowly around to my partner and calling his name out. Right. So, because I couldn't speak. I was paralyzed. Now, that's happened several times in my life, but since I've become more wise, it stopped. I also went on a journey then, and I moved towards learning about sleep paralysis. There is content and literature on it for over 2,000 years. And you can see little devils sitting on people in paintings and things like that. But what it led me to is the discovery of the djinn, spelt D-J-I-N-N. Now, the problem with learning about the djinn is once you know about the djinn knows about you. So I apologise. Now, I'm not saying the djinn exists. I'm saying that I researched the djinn. Now, the romantic New Age djinn is your genie, and you rub a little tea and it pops out and gives you lots of wishes. No. The original djinn comes from the Quran, and it's believed to be the first species, first entities on our planet, and they're not nice. They can shapeshift, so they could be walking amongst us right now, but they're sinister, and they're not going to give you wishes, let me tell you. So I started studying the djinn, which led me on to looking at a lot of Arabic literature and frightening myself to bits, really. So as I was writing my book Sword, this became really prominent, and I wanted to talk about one of the dreams that I had in relation to the djinn. So the djinn has become the darkness in my book series. It's evolved into that, and I was quite thick in reading about it. And my partner at the time, he said that I sat up in bed, and I don't actually ever have bad dreams much, in fact ever, and I started swinging my fists. And I know the dream very, very distinctly because I'm a very alpha female when it comes to my family. I would move out of the way, Dad, because I would hurt people to protect my children. I am a bear mummy, and in my dream, I was saying there was 2 djinns. And I was standing at my bedroom door, and I said, "Don't you come in, because you don't have the right." And it stepped over the line, and I went, "Don't, because I will come at you." And the djinn in my dream walked around my bed, and that's when I got up and I started swinging, right? So I think in reality, maybe punching the djinn wouldn't really help, but it gives you a sense of the way that I deal with darkness. My mum used to say to me, "You're so light, Jo. Why are you so drawn to the darkness? Why are you always going towards it?" And for years it made me feel a bit guilty, because I was always so drawn to the dark, to the real dark stuff. And it's because maybe I am light. And it also, I wanted to conquer it, because I thought if I can conquer all my fear, if I can conquer going into dark spaces, a bit like Hecate's the goddess, get to go in and I get to come out. And maybe I can go in and I can grab someone and help them come out, right? So my lightness is why I go to the darkness, because I get to do both. Now, I want to talk about Ouija boards. A couple of moments with Ouija boards. So the first Ouija board moments I had was with my mum. I think I was about 14. My sister and brother had moved out. Dad was going to bed because he had to get up quite early to go to work in the morning. And the minute we kind of knew Dad was snoring, we would get out our little pieces of paper. So homegrown Ouija board. Vegemite glass, right? And we'd get down and we were so excited. And it wasn't a time where you did white lighting. We didn't even know about it back then. I'm not a super fan of New Age. To me, New Age is old age. It drives me nuts when I hear people quoting New Age stuff. It's like, well, that was the 90s. Surely we've got some new information now. Surely we're doing something else. So please cleanse. I teach cleansing, but as far as like white lighting and God-based stuff or guides or spirit, like, it's not my cup of tea. Be the strongest energy in the room. I'm 43. That is what I'm teaching you, if anything, with all my years. You can white light, keep everything cleansed, but you make sure if you're going up against something or you're playing with something that you are ready to play with it. And I have learnt that from my experiences in the old schoolhouse, which I will get to. So the Ouija board. Now, we loved it. We played with it. It was always a waste of time. We never got anything concrete from it. But Mum had the touch. She would stick a little finger on there and it'd zoom across the table. I didn't necessarily have the touch, let me tell you. But one night it got a little bit erratic and it was zooming like this across the table. And we knew something wasn't right. And to the point it went off the table and it went off onto the carpet and we went, shit. And there was none of this goodbye stuff. We didn't do that. I think we just had the alphabet and yes and no. Like, so that night I went off to bed, turned off the light, and I could hear it. Something was moving. Little pieces of objects across my furniture. And I thought, oh no, okay, that's not really happening, is it? So I kind of listened, because you listen and you hold your breath, that's what you do. And you listen again, and you could hear it, scrape, scrape. And I was like, Dad's going to kill me. That's what I see. We've brought an entity into the house, Dad's going to kill me. Until my furniture started to rattle. And it started doing and I thought, shit. Now, I don't know what it is, but in hindsight, I think the power of turning the light on, it happens in movies too, the power of the light. Firstly, I decided I was going to do a jump. So I skittled down my bed and I jumped and I whacked my light on and I looked and there was nothing. It stopped. So I slept with the light on that night. My dad, bless his cotton socks, asked me why I was moving my furniture around, because I did that quite a bit. I'm always changing energy. So that was, don't play with Ouija boards. Another experience though I had with the Ouija board was in Victoria with my aunties. My mum and my auntie actually. And I apologise if my cousin's there because I can't quite remember that. Now, we set up the Ouija board and my auntie at the time had a dog, and I think the dog was in the room as well. And my son is going to hate that I'm telling this story. But that day on that Ouija board, I love you, Joe, I love you, Joe, I love you, Joe came out. And I think I was about maybe 18, and I was quite impressed that something on the other side was so in love with me. And I said, we said, who is this? And it spelt out Cohen, C-O-E-N. Now, Cohen is a Jewish name. You can chuck in a H as well if you like. But it was C-O-E-N. Now, I later on called my son Cohen. However, the same day, it kept bringing up Jack, 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 right? Which is really interesting because later on, we were going to call my daughter Jack. And I'm really glad we didn't. But the next day, unfortunately, my auntie's dog ran across the road and got hit at 110. And it was a Jack Russell. So we kind of put the two and two together and thought it had been a warning. It's a pretty tough day that day. It was the first time I ever went out and I pulled intestines into a bucket. I didn't want my auntie to see that. So that, my idea on Ouija boards, or Ouija boards, they're French. Actually, a lot of occult stuff is French. They're useless. They're good fun, but if you want to, they're probably lower energy stuff. You're not going to get, don't do it drunk. Like, it's low stuff. It's, because good, higher level energy stuff comes to you at different levels. So the Ouija board, I say, it's a play thing. It's not a real thing. Now, I'm just having a quick look so I don't forget what's going on down here. So I've talked about that. Good. Let's get to the old schoolhouse, because that's where I've never ever been in a space so haunted. Now, there are different names I call different things, and the reason I do that is because of the old schoolhouse. I have learnt my definitions and divisions of what different things are. The old schoolhouse was built in 1880 and was exactly that. It's where the headmaster would sleep. So the school was also on the premises, but then it became a residential home, and then later I owned it. And I loved the house. I loved it so much. In fact, it was probably one of the most heartbreaking experiences in my life having to sell that. So when we first moved in, and my partner wasn't spiritual. He certainly was open-minded, but he'd never actually physically seen anything. But this place was so rampant with so much activity that even he was seeing stuff. It was amazing. I saw this man walk across. He was dressed in maybe 1940s kind of gardening gear. Clear as. I was hanging the washing out, and he came walking as if he was going to do some gardening in the veggie patch. And he was gone. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then I also saw a little boy, maybe 11, and he was standing at the gate with a little, with like a backpack bag. Now, I only saw him for a second and he was gone. But I saw them so clearly, as if I was seeing you or me in the street. So I call them apparitions, those ones, but I did a lot of study at the old schoolhouse about the old schoolhouse. There were no murders, there's no this, there's no that. Why were these energies congregating there? Lots of ideas. I do believe we can see parallel universes. So maybe I was seeing another, like that person in the 1940s was doing that and I just happened to see it. That we some sort of linked in at the same time. That little boy going to school waiting for his mum to come. Maybe that's what I was seeing. Never saw it. I never felt any malice with those. And my partner who bought the house with me, he saw that as well. He saw like a woman standing in some gear, and so it was really, really amazingly active. The inside of the house was a little different. Inside of the house was haunted. And I say haunted because there was an element of things aren't quite as nice as they should be. And I saw it as a challenge. We actually had been told before we moved in the place was haunted. I was super excited. And also this young girl that stood on this old piece of wood that you stepped into the hallway, which was the older part of the house that had been built on. Now, the red room was in the center of the house, and it really, I called it the heart of the house because it was in the middle. It had no sunlight, and it had a manhole that went up into the roof, and it was just a room you never quite knew what to do with it. So if anything, if you're an energy believer like me, if energy is getting stagnant in some area, you're not cleansing it or unable to cleanse it, that area is a stomping ground for ghosts and activity. For some reason, if you want to cleanse your house, if you've got activity going on in your house, cleanse your house. Make it a happy home. People send me messages, my husband's been dragged out of bed by the ankle. What's going on in the house? What's changed? Well, we're divorcing and we're living in the same house together. Is there teenagers? Yeah. Kids? Okay, so this is what you're going to do. And then I go through the process of cleansing. I'm not about going and telling the spirit to nick off, right? I'm not about go to the light. Can't be bothered. That spirit's probably been there long before you have. But what you want to do is live with it. You want it to be a well-behaved spirit in the house. It's not allowed to grab you by the ankles. It's rude. So, I'm very much about mind your manners, right? I am. I talk to spirits like that all the time. Mind your manners. So in the red room, you'll never get that activity because I don't allow it. I allow visitors into the red room. Visitors are people or, energies that are passed over that have come specifically to talk to the client. They come, they're polite, they say what they need to say, and then they leave. Okay, so I call them visitors. So in the red room, I was painting it red. And I'd had a lot of male energy in that room. There was a very, very aggressive male. I always sensed him watching me. And for me, he was the one I had to deal with. So when I was painting the ceiling, he actually kicked the chair from out underneath me and I went and I landed on the ground. So that he was able to hit a physical object and move it in the response of malice. He wanted to hurt me. So I got up, pretty pissed off actually, and we had words. So pretty much said, if you're not paying the mortgage, you can fuck off, right? Because I'm the new alpha in the house. Now, that's not as easy as it seems. You can upset them a bit. But as we cleanse, if you want to cleanse a house, paint the house. Painting is one of the most amazing energy changes. So once that red room became the red room, it calmed so many of the energies in the house right down. However, I want to talk about a couple of the two spookiest moments I had there. The first one we'll call the dog incident. I don't know where my partner was at the time. He was probably off doing some work, and my son was there. He's a gamer. So, sorry, there's stuff going on. And gamers like to stay up all night, don't they? And they wear headphones, so they don't know anything that's going on. I'd make jokes that, someone could be standing right behind them and they wouldn't know. Anyway, I have woken, I think the time actually was about 12. I want to talk about times. There's this fallacy. Well, there's an idea that, 3 o'clock is the witching hour. 3 o'clock is probably the best time to speak to the other side, almost to the sunrise in the morning as well. If you want to sit and you want to have a chat, it is a thinner area to talk to visitors. So I was awoken by my dog Luna, and she's not my dog anymore, but very, very placid dog. She was border collie and would lick you rather than, well, she would lick you and jump on you and probably be more likely to pee on your foot than but she was a good guard dog. She was very noisy. And I thought I'd heard every noise from her. I knew what her snake bark sounded like. I knew what visitor bark sounded like, but I'd never heard her low growl. And I woke to that. I'm going to try and do it, and I might sound like an idiot. Right, that. But it was way worse. And I remember thinking, someone's in the house. Someone's in the hallway. And it's amazing what kicks in at that time. And I didn't stop her. I didn't say, Luna, what's going on? Because I knew something was not great in the house. And I must admit, I almost hoped it was a big, horrible, scary ghost than an intruder. Because, you know, that my mum always said it's not the dead you've got to be scared of. So anyway, I got up and I went out and I creeped up around her, and I had to think about very quickly what I was going to do. I didn't have my phone. And I thought, my son is across the hall. He's got headphones in. If there is someone in the house, he doesn't know, and I've got to save us. And unfortunately, what I thought was the best option was to set my dog onto them. My beloved dog, which could get hurt. But I thought the dog will go at them and I'm going to come flying around the corner as well. And I'm going to go at it. If it's an intruder, I'm going to run at it. Because it's a Scorpio and me, we're fighters. We're reactive, and we're a force. We will go at it, like, if we have to. So what I decided was to hit it with full force. So shaking and knowing something sinister was out there, I opened up the door really quickly. The dog didn't run like I had anticipated. She ran out into the hall and she turned very sharply. She backed back and she just went, "Rrr, rrr, rrr," and she just would not take her eye off something, and I froze. And I thought, I've got to hit the light. Patterns, get the light. Because now I knew it wasn't a person. I knew it was something. And it happened to be almost directly to where that step was, that people would always see in the apparition of the girl that had lived there in the white. So the white girl, right? And I decided to be brave, and I walked out into the hallway and I hit the light. And once again, I saw nothing. So I was almost disappointed, I'll be honest. I was disappointed, and I went through the house and I checked everything. And Luna basically was unsettled all night. So I had asked a lot of the owners that at the house, had they felt anything at the house. Some said they saw nothing and never ever felt anything. Others said they felt quite a bit. But there was a nanny who said to one of the owners who was looking after their children that something very evil was in the house. And I happen to agree with that, but I don't think it's always there. I really don't, because I started to see patterns of times when things would happen. And if I'd stayed there for another 20 years, I'd have got that down almost to probably knowing when they were visiting. So the second one was when we're having date night, and we were watching probably the worst movie we'd ever seen in our life. And because we lived in the country, we left open all the blinds. Now, I had seen things and he had seen things, but we had never ever seen anything together. And that night, as we were watching the worst movie of our life, this white figure on the outside of the door, it's a double doors, and at the top of it is window. This white woman floated past the window like that. Now, I have to admit, I looked at it, because I was looking at it and I just went, and then I looked back at the movie. I'm not even lying. I looked back at the movie. And then my partner, he turns and he goes, "Did you see that?" And I went, boof, out. I was out those two doors as quick as I could possibly go, because him seeing it and me seeing it was so awesome that I ran after it. And unfortunately, and as you come around the corner, it's a dead end. So there was a gate there and a water trough. And it was gone. There was nothing there. Because I thought, what if it's a prank? The neighbours might be pranking us. I can tell you by the way it moved. You know the nun? Imagine the nun and how that moves. And imagine the nun all in white. And that is what we saw. We would argue about that if it was kind of a veil. He reckoned it was a widow, like a veiled widow. I was sure, I thought it maybe was a nun, but all in white. Because, you know, you've only got a quick second to compute all that. So that was probably the most amazing thing I've ever seen, and the most related to things like in horror movies. And we never saw her again. But I always wonder, when people said they were seeing the girl in white on that step, that potentially that is what they saw. And she wasn't no girl. No way. No way. Whatever that was some scary shit. So if you want to ever do some research on the white widow or the woman in white, she comes or is seen when things are going to go bad. She is a forewarning. And I tell you what, that house almost saw me suicide. It was the most brilliant home and the worst home. So let's go into the red room. So when I started to do readings for people, I wasn't really sure I was a medium. It is in my bloodline. I now do say I am a medium because I think it's just as easy to Wi-Fi into someone who's passed over, like making a phone call. And if they come in, I can hear them much better. I can see them, and I start taking on their mannerisms sometimes. That's what the client tells me. They're like, oh God, you're doing what they always do. I sometimes still get the hairs raised on my arms, but in the red room, I started to learn that the way they came into the room represented certain things. If they came into that corner, slightly outside of it, I knew they had been non-believers, which is the irony that they were coming to have a conversation. They really didn't believe what I was doing. If they came, I called that corner the suicide corner. If anyone came into that corner, they had suicided. If someone came up behind me, I always knew that they'd been bad people or pranksters or tricksters. There's some sort of humour behind them too, a little bit. They'll come up. I find that really disrespectful when they come up behind you. Although I've had one play with my hair right in front, and like, it was so cute, and I thought, oh, that's adorable, you can do that. But generally the real chatty ones would come to the fireplace and they'd almost lean on there and go blah, 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 right? I don't know why some have more skill than others to come back. So I want to talk about when my mum passed, because Mum had promised me she would always come back and let me know there was an afterlife. And in recent years, she's got really good at it. She's even able to stop my phone and hit it at 111. Because Mum loved numbers and she loved number 1. So she's incredible what my mum can do. But in the beginning, she wasn't. She wasn't good at it. And I think she had to learn to be good at it. But I think it was maybe 2 days after the funeral. I was laying in bed. I can't tell you the sorrow that I felt in that period of my life. And I remember I was laying there, wasn't really sleeping, and I remember I had a pull to look towards the door, and I did, and I turned around and I saw my mum, only the top half of her, and a little bit like Harry Potter, those the picture frames, you know how they just do the same repetitious thing? Mum did that, but almost transparent. It was almost like it was her, but it wasn't her. And I always wonder sometimes if my brain was undoing her somehow. But it was about 20 minutes. I watched her for about 20 minutes, and she was just standing in the doorway, just doing this. Just playing with her hair and just looking directly at me. And we just stared at each other's eyes for a really long time. And then she left. And I didn't feel my mum around for a good 6 months. Now, that happened on the 10th of the 10th, 2011. And good old mum. I'm a little disappointed she didn't get to the 11th of the 11th, 2011. But anyway, she tried. So that Halloween, which was about 3 weeks later, my kids were at their dad's. And I was at the house on my own. And I suddenly heard, I woke up, and this was a 12 o'clock one too. I woke up at 12 to the sound of my daughter's doll, Belle from Beauty and the Beast doll. It sings. And she'd had it for years. My mum had bought it for her. And it was singing. And I was like, oh, okay. What set that off? Because you have to turn it on for it to sing. So I went to my daughter's room, and I want to say I've had moments in my life where it's felt sinister and other moments it hasn't. And it is what it is, that. And you have to listen to it. Because I knew whatever was going on in my daughter's bedroom, and she'd seen an entity in that house quite a bit. And, you know, my daughter. I never really saw it there. It was a beautiful little cottage that I lived in. I loved that house. And I went into her room, and the doll was on her pillow, and it was singing. So I turned the light on, went over to it, and I checked it. And I can't remember now if it was on or off, but I made sure she was off. Then I went and put her in the toy box. Because, you know, you should do that. If a doll is possessed, put it in a toy box, right? I put it in the toy box. It was like that. And I went back to bed. And it started again. And I have never spent a night more scared in my entire life. Now, you may say, wow, that's like... And she sings something like... my true love will come. I don't know what it is. You guys will know what it is. But it's a romantic song. But it wasn't romantic. And it was not my mum trying to send me a message. I can tell you that, because it's not how my mum would do it. Something sinister was feeding off my sorrow. Something in that house was scaring me. And you've got to be aware that when you are low, you're going to attract stuff. When you are great, you just don't attract that level. So I always, you know, make sure that I'm, you know, feeling quite happy with stuff, so that I'm not getting attracted or getting fed off lower entity stuff. So that night is the first night of my entire life that I shut her door and my door, and I got into bed, and I pulled up the sheets, and I basically just looked at the door like this until the sun came up. And yeah, that was terrifying. So I'm just gonna have a quick look at some other stuff that I might have forgotten about, because there are many. Excuse me. I'm suddenly looking at here going, I can't actually read my own writing. Which is not unusual, to be honest. Nobody else can either. Okay. I actually think I may have just talked about all the stuff that I needed to talk about. So I'm trying to think. I feel like I've missed some stuff, because there are many, many things. I want to talk about guides, actually. I'm not someone who works with guides. My mum was a great guide lover. If I do have guides, I apologise. Bit of a solo act here. Guides come for a reason, which is to help you. They're meant to look after you, you know, and guide you. So you're meant to be like listening to their information if you can. One of the I have occasionally seen other people have things attached to them. Now, one in particular was a lady that came, and her grief of losing her husband. Now, I have a lot of people come to me that are grieving. A lot. But this woman had grieved so badly and was in such denial about losing the love of her life that I could see a big black kind of thing next to her. this thing. Now I was having a chat with her husband. We're having a lovely little chat. But I didn't tell her about that. And I apologized for that. But I thought if we could get her into a place of resolution, to a place of acceptance, for a place of healing, that might go away. Because that's where she was putting it was almost like she was creating her husband in this massive yuck. She was creating something from sorrow. And it got me thinking about what we do create. You know, like I think everything has an energy component. So, you know, it's like when I went to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. And of course I study religion. Of course I'm open-minded. I wanted to touch the wall. It was stinking hot. I had heat stroke from the day before, you know, and there was a bomb squad right behind me. There were people everywhere. It's segregated. So you've got the female side, you've got the male side. The male side, they were having a great day. They were partying over there. There must have been some wedding going on. And they were la, 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 right? They're doing this and on this side where the females were, very different experience. So, respectfully, I went up to the wall. And you may say, well, is it respectful, Jo, because you are naturally a witch and witchcraft doesn't go with the Muslim faith, it doesn't go with Christian faith, it doesn't, but you know what? My belief system is so open that I never, ever say there isn't a God. And I never, and to be fact, I actually probably think in some ways there is, but for me, it's an intelligence. It's a mass intelligence that I think we're all linked to. So for me, I felt that because I was so educated potentially, I could go up to the wall. So I went up to the wall and I placed my hands on the wall. And you place your forehead on it and you touch it and you close your mind. Now, I wasn't expecting to have any epiphany or have a conversation or to hear anything. And I remember looking down the wall and there were Muslim ladies and there were Jewish ladies and there were other tourists and there were, I'm so sorry, I can't think what that religion is, but there were many different religions. All against the wall, all being very respectful, all going up and saying their piece. Now, the wall is historically important because it's lasted wars. It's lasted a lot of wars. So the wall is representative of faith. So people are going to the wall for faith, to have a moment with some clarity, a moment of respect, a moment of inner peace, right? So many people going up there for different reasons. I had the most amazing conversation on that wall, and it led me back to I was a little girl when I used to pray. And I'd forgotten I used to pray, and I have always combined religion, or particularly Catholic religion, Christian religion, as a male-dominated space. And as a witch, you know, it's very feminine, it's goddess-like, it's, you know, it's all-encompassing, it's all-improving of female. So, you know, in my younger years, I had naturally gravitated to religion, but as I got older, my feminist ways kicked in and I rejected that space. On that wall, I suddenly realised that there was no need for me to reject that space. There was no need for me to reject my masculine anymore. I had no problems with being on that wall. And there was a great amount of acceptance, and I felt a great amount of acceptance. Now, we may say, well, that could have been God, Jo. But what I think is, if you've got thousands of people going to that wall, placing their hands on it and offloading their energy thoughts into that wall, the likelihood for me as an energy lover is that the wall is full of people's energy, and the energy is acceptance and love, right? So my belief system is what you project is what you receive. If you've got a house that is full of bad energy, inner look, externally fix, inner look. So getting back to that, that is when I started to realize that we can create energy. So take responsibility for it. Now, blanked what I was going to say on that one too. Now this is going to be one for the people that are a little bit more out there. And I've never really talked about this much. And getting back to the time when I was at my auntie's in Victoria, and Mum and I had to share a bed together. Ugh, I hate sharing beds. And the house is quiet. It was out in the countryside. And we hadn't been talking about, I think we'd been talking about scary stuff, but not about aliens. And what happened that night is Mum and I were chatting in bed, la la la, as we do, and we both saw this sprinkle of lights come in to the window. And it was like little, it wasn't orbs, it was almost like little tiny little sparkles. And it came across, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, this is aliens, right? In my mind, aliens. And then I went to sleep. Boom. Sleep. The next day when I woke, I asked Mum what happened, and she said they spoke to me. She never told me what happened, and she never told me what they said. And so Mum, if you'd like to tell me, that'd be great. So I wanted just to share that, because that you're seeing two people are seeing something. So there's lots of stories out there. Feel free to tell your stories down below in the comments, because I love it. I want to, I don't talk about demonic stuff, because demonic is attached to the good old Catholic stuff. I think the day that I see someone who gets possessed and has never heard of possession or belief or faith or fear, and they become, then I'm probably more likely to believe in demonic possession. I watch it all the time on TV. I love it. I study it all the time. So Vatican, give me a call. But I want to see it, because I do believe that the human body and the human mind is incredible. And what we can create. So if you believe in demonic and you believe it's in you, what you could project from that is probably more fascinating to me than is there demonic. But like the djinn. Now let's get back to the djinn. The djinn is the original. So I want you to go and have a quick read up about the djinn. It will scare the shit out of you when you learn it. Because it's one of the oldest stories in the Quran. And what they do, it's fascinating. I mean, the Quran, but if people look at the Bible and they look at the Quran and they read these subject matters as subject matters rather than doctrines, it's fascinating. So I read it and go, it sets off my creative brain a lot. And also, I know how hard it is to write a book. So I look at the Bible. I've got an old Bible. It's it was printed in 1800s, and the first chunk of it tells you about the history of how it gets there, and it's quite honest about the story and how it keeps getting changed and rearranged for all the time. It's not unhonest about that. And so you can see this add-on of this energy. So the Bible itself is fascinating to me, because so much collection is in it, so much. And you know what, it's at a later day I'm going to talk about symbols. Symbols are the bomb. Absolutely the bomb. And this is why the stonemasons are all over it. Actually, let me have a quick chat about the Illuminati. And we all know, I'm getting into conspiracy theories now. But I wanted to tell you my story with the Illuminati. So there is a belief system that there is a program on the computer called Sophia. Goddess Sophia comes from the word sophisticated, or where the word sophisticated comes from. It was a highly intelligent goddess, and she was female. And so it's believed that when you put in little keywords that it tells, you know, and we all know it to be true because we see marketing all the time. However, I was studying at the time the Illuminati for my book Original Coven. My friend at the time was studying the Illuminati for just some interest. Now, we came together and we had our conclusions about what could be the Illuminati. I don't think something that is a mass organisation potentially would be so easy to study, to be honest. I mean, the Scorpio, it just says that's ridiculous. But then sometimes things are right in front of us and we don't see it. So I was studying that for my book. He's studying it for self-interest. He decides the Illuminati is devil worshipping. I think it's goddess worshipping. I think it's a goddess, right? So we came to different conclusions, and in my Original Coven, of course, that fitted my storyline because it's goddesses and it's witches. So next story, I receive an email from the Illuminati and an Instagram friendship. Now, it sounds stupid. And I certainly wasn't looking for the Illuminati, but I had been putting in keywords. At one stage, I don't mind the marketing thing. If you're going to be putting stuff into the search engine and the next thing you know, everything's coming up for marketing, it is what it is. And I hate it, but it is what it is. However, when I am writing my book on my Word document and it is not being saved to cloud, it is on my hard drive, it pisses me off that when I'm writing keywords in that marketing is still happening. That annoys me because get off my private stuff. So my idea is they're reading my book. In my paranoid state, they're reading my book. And they're also looking at what he's writing. And then I started thinking, why didn't he get an invitation to the Illuminati? So I have to laugh. But I think what the message was in memory was, we think you're very talented, but we'd like to give you some money. Right? In hindsight, I should have jumped at that. Like, you know, however, you know, so righteous. I'm like, and also I'm very cagey. So as it turned out, they've now blocked me on everything because I tell people this story and they don't like it. I don't think it was the Illuminati. I think it's people who think they are the Illuminati or they are the counter for the Illuminati. Anyway, it's fascinating stuff. I'm going to stop now because it's 52 minutes. It's probably going to take me about 3 days to upload it. And thank you for checking in and thank you for staying. And lots of love and all together, let's get through this lockdown stage.